Hi, welcome to the IHC Craft Room. I'm Mary. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made these wax melts. I've never made wax melts before, so this was a new experience for me. And I decided to make a really ambitious go of it because I also tested the Village Craft & Candle Fall Fragrance Explore Kit. And there are 10 fragrances in that kit, and I decided I'm going to make them all. So I did. And it took me quite a while. I did some things well and some things not so well. And I'm going to share all of my results with you. So grab all your stuff and let's get crafty.
This is Mary. Welcome to the IHC Craft Room. For materials, we'll begin with Millennium Soy Wax, some clamshells, 6-cavity and pie-shaped, Village Craft & Candle's Fall Fragrance Explore Kit, and 4 colors of liquid candle dye, yellow, red, green, and brown. For tools, we're going to need some parchment paper, paper towels, a kitchen scale, a glass measuring cup, a temperature gun, a pot holder, some plastic shot glasses, some wood stir sticks, and a pair of rubber gloves. Let's get started with opening up this Explore kit and getting these little 30 ml bottles out. Before we go any further, we'll need to figure out exactly how much fragrance oil and wax we'll need to make these melts. So it's time for some wax melt maker math. Both of these clamshells have a recommended wax fill of 2.5 ounces or 71 grams per clamshell. Millennium Soy Wax has a max fragrance load of 12%. And based on the research I did before making these wax melts, I learned that 12% is actually a pretty average fragrance load for melts. So I opted for that instead of my usual 10%. I decided to shoot for 70 grams rather than 71 grams per clamshell. So that means I'm going to need 62 grams of wax and 8 mils of fragrance oil to achieve the overall 70 grams of combined wax and oil we're targeting. I decided that it would be easiest to measure out all of the fragrance oils first. That way, I only have to focus on measuring out wax before I melt it in the microwave. I'm going to protect my scale with a piece of parchment paper and paper towel like I always do, and wear my gloves. This is just to ensure that I don't end up smelling like all of these fragrances, especially not pumpkin. Santa Maria, I'd want to die. Okay. Moving on. Overall, this was a good move and something I will do again if I test future fragrances via wax melts, which, spoiler alert, is exactly how I intend to test fragrance in the future. It eliminates the wick factor, which is a big one when making candles, but we'll probably get back to that topic a bit later. For right now, let's focus on getting this oil measured out. Now, let me just say before we really get into the thick of it here that I am not a fan of the smell of pumpkin. Nay, not I. 'Tis nauseating. So I'm not going to be able to give you any objective feedback on the pumpkin fragrances. Now, apple stuff, yes, queen. I am here for it. And leaves, crackling birch, yes to all. But pumpkin, hard pass. My apologies, but you'll have to take it up with my gag reflex, okay? Once that's done, I'll move on to measuring out my first round of wax. Since I don't have a big wax melter, I thought it would be easiest to melt 62 grams of wax in a glass measuring cup in the microwave. 10 times. Yeah, I said that. 10 times. That was a bit time consuming. In future, if I make this many melts at the same time, using this many different fragrances, well, I just won't. I'll only do 3 or 4 fragrances at a time max, because this was a serious time commitment and I'm not sure I want to make it again in the future. In the end, I started melting 2 sets of wax at a time in the microwave, which was a huge benefit when I had a major moment of brain fog. Perimenopause is no joke, friends, but I'll get back to that later. For now, let's talk about melting wax in the microwave. It's recommended to melt it in 30-second bursts during each time you take it out of the microwave. Be warned, the handle is going to get seriously toasty by the end, so be careful. I'm going to spare you from watching me weigh and melt this wax 478 times. Instead, let's focus on mixing and pouring. I attempted a number of colors on these melts, and some were successful, and some turned out kind of gross, actually. So, do you could definitely add color, but I think for me in future, when I make other wax melts, I'm going to stick with just a plain white, because I just like the way it looks. It's pretty. I've included a breakdown of how many drops of liquid color dye I added to each of these melts, and I put that in a pinned comment below in case any of these colors blow your hair back and you want to give this combination a try. Check it out in the comment section. Let's talk about this wax a bit. I've never worked with Millennium Soy Wax before, so I looked up some info on it. It's recommended to heat to 160 degrees Fahrenheit before adding your fragrance and color, and then let it cool down to 115 degrees before pouring. And as I mentioned before, it has a max fragrance load of 12%. Now you may have noticed that I'm pretty focused on bringing this temperature down with my customary dance of the potholder fan. And for the first 2 or 3 melts, I followed all the rules like a good girl. Here's the thing though. The wax melt clamshells that I'm pouring the wax into, well, it has a recommended pour temperature of about 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So it didn't take me long to start pouring my wax between 140 and 150 degrees. Yeah, Mary was getting seriously impatient. Did I mention I made all 10 of these? That took a whoppingly long time. Whoppingly. In case you didn't know, I just made up that word. Remember earlier when I mentioned that I had a little episode of brain fog while making these melts? Well, we are approaching that moment right now. So let's enjoy, shall we? I accidentally, instead of using the fragrance that I had measured out into this little shot glass, I ended up pouring it out of the 30 ml bottle. Yeah, if you're following, that means I put 22 mils of fragrance oil into that wax. Was not my plan, not at all. And frankly, I just sat there in shock for a few minutes going, what do I do now? I really messed this up. How am I gonna fix this? So in the end, I doubled up the wax and it still ended up being about a 15% fragrance load when I figured out the math after the fact, but it's okay. I don't mind a strong melt. This was a major moment of brain fog. Let's all move on, shall we? Now that WTF moment is behind us, I'm going to continue the same process. Melt the wax to 160 degrees, mix in the fragrance and color, let the temperature drop down to between 140 and 150, and then pour it into the clams. Done and done. Easy peasy. So let's let these set overnight and then we'll have a look at how they cured. Alrighty, we're now 24 hours out and these wax melts have all cured quite nicely. The tops are smooth, no sinkholes or visible bubbles. They're each giving off some noticeable cold throw as well. So this is all good news. In not so good news, we have some noticeable frosting, particularly on the melts that I added color to. This isn't really surprising, but it is something to note. And every single melt had wet spots and areas that you could see that the wax was pulling away from the clamshell. Now, I suspect there are a number of reasons this might have happened. It could be something that Millennium Wax just does. I don't know because this is my first time using it. Or, and what I think is most likely the case, this has to do with temperature. The temperature I poured the wax into the clamshell and also the speed at which the wax cooled down once it was in the clamshell. Let's not forget the temperature of the room that it's curing in. It also plays a role in this equation. And it also impacts the overall finished product. Well, I'm definitely not going to remember which melt is which, so I'm going to take a few minutes to slap some little labels on here before I start testing these melts in my new electric wax melt melter. Come on, how cute is this little melter, right? Adorable. I'm so in love. Oh my God, let's move on. Minus the pumpkin scented melts, I tested every other fragrance using my melter, and I got some pretty decent hot throw for a first attempt. I've shared my thoughts on these fragrances in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section, so check that out for my opinion on these fall fragrances.
So I consider this experiment a total win. I learned how to do something new, and this is actually a really great way to test fragrance that I never really thought about before. By eliminating that extra factor of the wick and if it's performing the way it should in your overall recipe, that really helps you just like focus on the fragrance part. And I never really thought of it before, but that's a total win. I'm going to be doing that again in the future for sure. And hopefully by that point, I won't continue to make the same mistakes and I'll learn something from this experiment. I'd love to hear from you in the comments to see if you learned something new too, or if there's something that you can share with me so that I can try something different in my next melt video. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in learning about candles, check out one of these videos. And don't forget to subscribe so that we can continue to get crafty together. Toodaloo!